Okay, R3, trig ratios and similar right triangles. So if you have right triangles that are similar, that means that they're the same shape, but not necessarily the same size. If that's the case, then, and this is the case because we have angle, 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 angle. So these two triangles are similar because of angle, angle. Then X is in the same spot as S, W is in the same spot as T, and V is in the same spot as U. So because they're similar, their trig ratios are similar also. So if it's like asking for sine X, here's X, what's corresponding to X? S. So if I'm looking for sine X, I could also just find sine X is the same thing as sine S, and sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So if we have, if we're looking at S, this one is opposite, and this one is hypotenuse. So the opposite is 4, and the hypotenuse is 5. So sine S is 4 over 5, so sine X is 4 over 5. So tan Z, Z and U. So if I'm looking for tan Z, that's the same thing as tan U. Tan is opposite over adjacent. Here's opposite, here's adjacent. So it's 20 over 21. And that does not reduce, so that is the answer. It's looking for cosine S, S, and W. So cosine W and cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. This is adjacent, this is hypotenuse. So 28 over 53. 7, 4, nothing goes into it, so it doesn't reduce. So 28 over 53 is your answer. Okay, I was wondering why I left some space up on top. Oops, no. Come here. Okay, now, we did not do R2, but I need to take just a few minutes to explain something. We're going to talk about reciprocal trig ratios. Okay, so sine X is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine X is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent X is opposite over adjacent. That's what we've been learning in R1 and just a little bit now in R3. But what happens sometimes is that these opposite over hypotenuse and adjacent over hypotenuse, opposite over adjacent, can be flipped. And when they're flipped, they're not going to be called sine, cosine, and tangent anymore. They're going to be called cosecant X, secant X, and cotangent X. There's supposed to be a space. I'm just running out of room. The abbreviation for cosecant is CSC. The abbreviation for secant is SCC. And the abbreviation for cotangent is COT. And since these are reciprocal functions, the reciprocal of opposite over hypotenuse is hypotenuse over opposite. The reciprocal of adjacent over hypotenuse is hypotenuse over adjacent. The reciprocal of opposite over adjacent is adjacent over opposite. These are reciprocal functions to each other. Now, the way that I remember it, because I wasn't allowed to use notes on test day and stuff, we have sine, cosine, cosecant, secant. The cosine and the cosecant aren't going to be together, okay? So if that's the case, then the sine and the cosecant go together, and the cosecant and the cosine and the secant go together. So that's just how I remembered it, so I wouldn't have to look it up all the time. Okay, so now we're looking for cotangent D. So cotangent D. Cotangent D is the same thing as cotangent. Well, it really doesn't matter because we have everything for cotangent. Cotangent is adjacent over opposite. So we're going to look at this triangle right here. If this is D, then this is adjacent, this is opposite, and this is hypotenuse, because the right angle always points to the hypotenuse. So the adjacent is 12, and that's 35. 3, 4, I'm just seeing if it reduces. It does not. So 12 over 35 is going to be your answer. Okay, and then it goes back to sine D. D and C are the corresponding angles. So let me swoosh, so I can have as much room as I can. Okay, so sine D is the same as sine C, and how you find sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Your opposite is 80, your hypotenuse is 89. Those do not reduce, so that is your answer. Cotangent D will be the same as cotangent G. Cotangent is adjacent over opposite. Adjacent over opposite. That does not reduce, so that's your answer. Cosecant Q is going to be the same as cosecant T. Cosecant is a reciprocal of sine, and sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So this is hypotenuse over opposite. So the hypotenuse is 89, and the opposite is 80. Those do not reduce, so that is your answer.